Hello everyone, today I'm going to be sharing a video on how to make this simple bonnet. The first thing you're going to need to do is download the free printable pattern that I've made. It is on my website, naturalnappyhouse.com. It is just on the home page, so as soon as you open up the website you'll see this little button to download the pattern, and it will open it as a PDF. You just need to print this PDF, don't change any of the settings, just print it as it is, and then you have the pattern. After you have printed the pattern, it can just be on normal printer paper, it doesn't have to be special tracing paper or anything. You just want to cut around the black line around the outside and you'll have this sort of backwards P shape, I guess, and then you're just going to need to pick your fabric. I'm using this sort of florally pattern. It's not cotton, it feels a little bit different to 100% cotton, but any sort of fabric will work as long as it's not too thick. So you're just going to find a bit of the fabric and fold it up. So the pattern, you need to cut it on the fold, sorry. So you're going to take the bit of fabric and just fold it up like I'm showing you here in the video, and then once you place the pattern onto the fabric, where the little place that I've marked as place on fold, this edge needs to be up against the fold in the fabric, so that once you've cut it out you can open it up and it's exactly the same on both sides, if that makes sense. So you're just going to cut this out of your fabric of your choice. This is going to make the outside of your bonnet, and you're going to need to cut out the exact same shape in your lining fabric. I've just decided to go with white, but you could do any colour you like. You could also do 2 different patterned colours if you wanted and make a reversible one, but here I'm showing you how you need to line this up to sew it together. So on the first piece you just need to line up, like I'm showing in the video, the 2 edges, and there will be extra at the bottom, so don't worry about that, but we're going to sew along this edge. So I'm just pinning it in place as I'm showing you here. So we're just lining it up, and that little corner needs to meet where my left hand is. That's where the fabric needs to meet, and that will make the corner sort of the bonnet, if that makes sense. So we're just going to sew along both of these lines. I'll show it up close in a second, but here you can see I've just pinned it to each other. I'm just going to sew along those 2 edges, and there will be this little bit of extra fabric at the top. We want that extra fabric, and I'll tell you what that's for when we get to that stage that we need it. So you're just going to do the exact same process for the white piece or your lining piece, and just pin it in place so it is ready to be sewn. After both of your pieces of fabric have been pinned together, you're just going to sew along both of those straight edges, making sure that you're only sewing together those 2 pieces of fabric and that no other bit of fabric is caught underneath or anything. So there should just be 2 straight lines on each piece. So 2 straight lines on the outer fabric, and then another 2 straight lines on your inner lining fabric that you need to sew together. Now this is where the video becomes a little bit complicated, but you just need to watch what I'm doing and I'll try and explain it the best I can. So with your inner fabric, you're going to turn it in the right way and push out the corners of the fabric like I'm showing here. Push them out to make a point. So now your lining fabric is in the right way. And you want to keep your outer fabric inside out, so you can see the seams on the outside of that piece. So this, I'm just cutting off the threads, by the way, but this is going to get a little bit confusing and you need to sort of watch what I'm doing. So the fabric for the inner of the bonnet is turned in the right way, and the fabric for the outside of the bonnet is inside out still. So what we're going to do is take the bonnet outside of the bonnet and just open it up like this, and you should just be able to slide in the lining. So we're just going to put them together so that the corners of the bonnet at the top match up together. You just want to match it up as best as you can, but it should line up completely because we've cut it out the exact same way and sewn it the same way. So after you line it up, just line it up as best you can. Like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect because we're just going to sew it together, and you can make it a bit more perfect once you sew it. But I'm just now going to pin this in place so that when we are sewing it, it doesn't move around too much. Now, if you remember before, I said there was going to be this extra piece of fabric sticking out of each of the ends. You're going to sew around, all the way around, except where that extra fabric is. So on either side of that extra fabric is where you will stop. So don't sew this part together because that's where we're going to turn it in the right way. After you have sewn all the way around the bonnet, it should just be a nice straight stitch. It's not too fancy or anything. I'm just going to take the pins out and clip the little threads. So if you have sewn it correctly, which is just around the whole thing except for those two little bits of fabric, you should be able to turn it in the right way. So what you're going to do is place all of the other bit of fabric through this hole, sort of like putting it in like a little pocket, and you're just going to push out all the corners when you turn it in the right way. So there should be 6 corners, sorry, 2 on either side, 1 on either side, sorry, and 2 at the top of each piece. So there'll be 6 little corners. And so then it'll look like this. Now this is a bit confusing as well, but you're going to push the lining into the top fabric, like what we did before, but this time they're sewn together. And just sort of flatten it out and make sure it lays flat. We're going to top stitch it so that it lays flat, but just sort of match up those 2 corners on the inside, and it should fit perfectly because we've sewn it together. So just match it up as best as you can. And then this is where the extra fabric is, which is what we're going to use to turn in these little flaps so that we can create a seamless edge. Now I cut a little bit off this just because it was a tiny bit long, but you don't want to cut off all of it because we need enough so that we can fold it in. So what I'm just about to do here is fold in those little pieces of fabric so that when we sew it together, it's not going to be a raw edge. It'll be just like the rest of the bonnet. So we're just going to now sew around the whole thing one more time just to seal everything up. This is called top stitching, which just makes everything lay a little bit flat when you sew 2 things together and turn them in the right way. After your bonnet has been top stitched, we need to make the little ties. So I'm just using this green ribbon stuff, and I'm just going to tie a knot in the bottom of it. This will prevent the ribbon from fraying, so instead of sewing it like up, I've decided to just tie a knot in it, which is a lot easier. So I'm just tying a knot and then cutting off the extra fabric. Make sure you don't, the extra ribbon, sorry, make sure you don't cut off too much because that might cause the knot to unravel. But I'm just going to do this twice, so we have one knot for each tie because we're going to need 2 ties for the bonnet. After you have made the 2 knots in your ribbon or cord, you can really use whatever you'd like. You could even use a bit of fabric to match the bonnet. But I'm just going to now trim the ties to size. Now, since I've made this bonnet before, I sort of already have a rough idea of how long they need to be, but just to show you how long I think you should make them, I've just lined them up sort of with the bottom edge of the bonnet just to make a approximate length. If you wanted to, you could also try the bonnet on the baby that you're wanting it to fit and adjust the ties accordingly, but I just sort of estimated the tie. Now we're going to sew them onto the bonnet. Now you want to line up the straight edge of the ribbon with that corner of the bonnet. So just going to line it up straight like that and just going to sew a couple times, going back and forth just to reinforce it and make sure that it's not going to come undone when you are tying the bonnet onto your baby. This little bit is also a little bit confusing, but we're just going to fold over the ribbon like I'm doing here and then sew across it again. This just makes sure that there's no raw edge of the ribbon showing, and it just makes it look a little bit neater. So I'm just going to sew over that a couple times as well. You could also do the ribbon when you're sewing the bonnet together and make it seamless, but to make this an easier tutorial I just decided to do it like this because that is a little bit tricky doing it the other way. So then this is what it should look like, and we're just going to repeat that on the other side, which I didn't show you, but it's just the exact same way. And there you have your bonnet. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope I sort of explained it in an okay way. Unfortunately, my comments are disabled, but if you have any questions, feel free to contact me on Instagram at LittleRebornBubbas, and I will be more than happy to answer any of your questions. But here it is on a baby. I did say it was a newborn size, but this is a 3 to 6 month baby, so I mean you can really get away with a bigger baby wearing this as well. But here's the bonnet. I'm very happy with how it turned out, and I hope you have fun making your bonnets. Like I said on the pattern, well, what was written on the pattern, I would appreciate if you did not use this pattern to make products and sell them. I don't have a patent for this pattern or anything like that, but I am giving it to you for free and giving you a free tutorial, so I would just appreciate if you did not produce this pattern as something to sell. I would rather you just make it for your own personal use. So yeah, I'm sure there are other bonnet patterns out there that you can use to sell products, but like I said, I just appreciate if you did not use this pattern to make bonnets and then sell them for profit. So yeah, but thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Again, any questions, message me on Instagram and I'll try to help. But yes, I hope everyone has a lovely day, and thank you for watching.